NJ, baby. I saw you shout out. All right, let's do this thing. A little camera malfunction. Sorry, I had to do a teaser because it's interesting to me. All weekend long, guys, I said, let's give a little bit more time to this. I don't like polling during the war drum beat, but you got to do it. And then let's see what happens when the war drums die down. And I don't even want to take the questions out of the poll. Let's see what happens to his approval rating, economic sentiment. And then, honestly, for me, which I'm going to show you first, is Democratic Party affiliation in this country. What the hell is going on? Republicans are the dumbest party ever to be established on planet Earth, I truly believe. And I mean, dumb encompasses corrupt, because you have to be stupid to be this corrupt. Then again, the Whigs, man, the Whigs, woo, the Tories, I mean, you know. The Tories took an opportunity of a lifetime, folks, and utterly destroyed it by being a lot like Republicans today. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. And if you like the videos, you should definitely like them and follow them on Rumble, on, of course, Locals, which is the best place to... Oh, it's not mirrored today. The best place to follow us. Oh, no, it is. Excellent. peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, definitely pulled the trigger on the public polling project before it was done because I felt like we absolutely needed to get into the field at that time, and I have to do a write-up and everything tomorrow to show you the results, or to do the results that I'm going to show you. Since last week, we spoke to about 1,200 more people since you saw late last week some of the results of the poll, mid to late. And I wanted to drop off the old ones, but we will take a look at the comparison of the two. And honestly, not much difference. However, luckily for Donald Trump, well, I'm not going to give away the goose just yet. Let's talk first about Democratic Party affiliation in this country. Let me say this again, because I feel like anytime there may be a new watcher, they need to know this when they are looking at shows like mine, or they're trying to learn about polling or politics in general and understand these things, okay? Registration by party, voter registration. What did you register as when you registered to vote? In most states in this country, you register as a Democrat. You register as a Republican. Maybe, like in Florida, for instance, you register as an NPA, no party affiliation, right? Or you register as something else, like a third party, for instance. Could be the United Utah, if you live in Utah. It could be in Florida and other states, the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, right? The Tax or Constitutional Party, the Tax Reform or Constitutional Party. When you change your registration, let's say 10 years ago, you registered as a Democrat. and now you want to register as a Republican. You consider yourself to be a Republican. And that's the key. You're not going to change your party registration until you have already begun to identify with that new party. Therefore, party affiliation, as you see in polls, most pollsters, I will give you our exact wording right now, say something like this. Generally speaking, do you consider yourself a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or something else? For the purposes of our polling, we rotate the first two options. So maybe respondent A would have, and I'm going to pick on somebody over here, okay? So Drearier, maybe when we called you and we asked you this question, Drearier on locals, you got that in the order that I just gave you. But maybe Don, who's also in locals, or for instance, let's pick somebody on YouTube, Norm, okay? Maybe when we call you, it will say this. Generally speaking, do you consider yourself a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, or something else? We do what's called pinning or fixing for the last two options, meaning independent and something else are always going to be in the third and fourth order, or in this case, the second to last and the last order. Democrat and Republicans, because of course they're the largest block for the respondents, they will be given and rotated to avoid first response bias, which is basically the idea that a certain group, it won't be a lot, but a certain group may always choose the first choice just because. And I know that sounds stupid, but it's there. It's a real thing. And in order to deal with that, we rotate these options. The same way that when we ask about a vote preference, for instance, in our generic ballot, we will rotate them. But I don't want to get too far off topic. That is generally how we ask about party affiliation. And other pollsters will do something the exact same way, or they'll do something extremely similar. But the fact of the matter is, they will say it like that. There are, and I have showed you this, there's the option to then say, regardless of what you may consider yourself now, what party or what did you register as, or what are you currently registered as in your state? And then, by the way, shocker, anyone we talk to, we can pull from the voter file. We know what their registration is. And I used Utah as an example before, and I did on locals for what I'm about to say, because it's such a great example. There are a lot of different third parties, and in Utah, there's actually a lot of United Utah registrations. They're a significant percentage. However, when you poll Utah, many of the people who are registered as United Utah will nevertheless tell you that they are Republicans, and vice versa. The conservative party in New York, all right, they will tell you, I'm a Republican, all right? Make sense? That always comes first before people ever go down and actually change their party registration. So why am I telling you this? It should be, despite all of the BS you see in media and the groupthink, and that's what happens. It happens in this industry, it happens in politics. We get caught in groupthink and we get caught in a conventional wisdom and we fail to move on. All right. And it is, or we used to be, a legitimate reason for why we would have significant polling misses. Okay. Or maybe not even, but significant enough. We always thought, well, this is what the electorate said they looked like in the prior presidential election. I will wait by party based on what it was last election. The massive problem with that is that you will miss these trends. And there are several polls out there, including one joke of a poll that I told you was a psyop. His job, their job, was to basically copy the People's Pundit and copy others like Mark Mitchell to mirror us as closely as possible because they knew that we were going to be more accurate. We have been more accurate. And their entire job was to mirror us so that after the election, if and when they lost, which everyone knew they would, that they could then claim that they also are accurate. And when we're showing very shitty numbers for the president, it's because, we know what we're doing. We've been able to poll the Trump voter, and I have submitted to you to go in their crosstabs, and you will see that that is not legitimate. That is not real. They were waiting, whatever data set they collected crap in a crappy methodology. They were waiting to mirror that. In truth, they are friends with Nate Silver, and it was a total psyop. And now they're running around calling themselves the most accurate pollster, even though we don't need them. We have accurate pollsters right here in this country. They intentionally misrepresented our numbers because they are not the most accurate. If they had to include our numbers with the correct numbers, they would have been more like number 4. All right. So anyway, I digress. Even they, a company like that, routinely, consistently, and now they're back to it, these D+3s, D+6s, D+9s. And when I say D+, what I mean is the sample of the poll has been weighted to reflect that there are a higher percentage within that sample, and overall electorate is what it's supposed to represent, that call themselves or identify as Democrats. Big media polls keep doing it. University polls keep doing it. And here's the kicker. Here's the problem. That universe doesn't exist. It's not real. It hasn't been the case for a decade now. When Donald Trump ran against Hillary Clinton in a state like, for instance, Pennsylvania, the voter file said that it was like D+9, at least. It would vary here and there. But the voter file, when you just simply looked at the actual registration data from the state, it was D+9. But the electorate, many registered Democrats showed up and told the exit pollster they were either independents or maybe even Republicans. Utah, the example I brought up before. Again, locals, you already know this if you've been following me for a while. I showed you that the actual sample itself was 47% Republican, yet 52% of that sample identified as Republican. It's telling you that registrations are likely to change because identification is a leading indicator. North Carolina, another great example. Florida, another great example. When Donald Trump won the state of Florida against Hillary Clinton, Democrats still had an advantage in party registration, yet the electorate said it was R+1. That is because Democrats, older, whiter, before Trump, it became more non-white, and the new migrants coming from other states made Florida more Republican, but people were changing their registrations. This has been going on all over the country. Even in very, very, very blue states like New Jersey once upon a time. And for people who think, it was close in 2024. Rich, it's not a very blue state. It's one of only 2 states that moved toward Barack Obama from 2008 to 2012. The whole damn country moved against Barack Obama from 2008 to 2012, except for New Jersey and Hawaii. Now, last election, California and New Jersey moved heavily toward Donald Trump. There is nowhere, and by the way, they had 2 other states during the Biden election, Georgia and Arizona, where Democrats actually did make gains. Those were erased between 20 and 24. Nevada, even nonpartisan registration states where you ask people, the identification moved toward Republicans. Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota, great examples. There's nowhere on the map where you can point to and say Democrats are gaining in registrations. And oh, by the way, we should have known because in identification, when pollsters would ask, we could see that trend. So nobody should be surprised when a good pollster comes back after now what is a 10-year trend, close to a 10-year trend of Democrats losing registrations like crazy, bleeding from Pennsylvania to Florida. It should not surprise anyone that in the identification trend, it has gotten significantly more Republican. When Joe Biden first took office, and actually, I mean, I know I can show you this. Hold on. I don't want to take down this other thing I'm going to show you, but you can go to Big Data Poll. I insinuated this last week. You can go to the front of Big Data Poll and you can see the Biden era trend for party identification. All right. And what you'll see is that Democrats did make like what was a significant bounce back. And let me pull down the results I want to show you real quick. And let me just show you that trend. Okay. This is the Biden era trend. All right. At the end of Biden's days, however, you could see that Republicans had a 1.9 advantage. And then would tighten up and go back and forth here and there. And I think at the end of our final poll, don't twist my arm. I'd have to go back and look. Ballpark around R+1. The electorate was roughly R+1, even R+1. And guess what? It was. And that has not stopped since Donald Trump has been president. Now, it has tightened here and there. It has gone up a little bit for Republicans, gone down a little bit. But we have not seen a Democratic advantage in any significant way, since 2021. Okay? That's the last time you can see. And let me see if you can get the actual. There we go. Democrats 39.4, Republicans 31.7. And that was in September of 2021. Almost at the end of Joe Biden's first term. Coming close. Coming into the fall of the end of his first term. Then we would, of course, get the inflation crisis, the cost of living crisis. And it really hurt him, although they managed to hang on in the midterms where they should not have. And that's why Republicans should not be jumping up and down for joy right now, because the fact of the matter is the Republicans are more than capable of blowing this. They're the dumbest people on planet Earth. I really can't. So people, there's a Republican pollster. I absolutely cannot stand the Republican Party. I'm sorry. As people, I don't like them. All right. I don't like politicians in general at all. They know it. I tell them to their face, not a secret. The only one who thinks that or thinks I'm like that are the media. Most Republican lawmakers who know me know I can't stand them. Even though I'm pretty nice. I mean, some of them are nice people, man. I actually think we have some very nice people in Congress. But for the most part, the party's stupid. Few people, especially in my home, it's my home state. My native state. It's my adopted state. There's some really good ones. Mark Harris is a really nice guy. I have no problem saying that. But for the most part, Congress is not where you find a bunch of people, So this idea that they know they can run to me is not exactly legit. Anyway, we're going toward the election. You can see what's happened here. Now, we've had ups and downs, but if I was to take this polling, guys, and go all the way back to 2016, what you would see is, because this is a short duration of time, and in that rather short duration of time for the overall trend, you're seeing the volatile ups and downs for each party's identification. When you expand the trend, you will see there is a very, very clear evaporation of the percentage of people in this country who identify as a Democrat. If you study registration trends, none of this should surprise you. In fact, the only thing that really should surprise us anymore is that anybody could put out a poll showing Democrats with a significant advantage in their sample. It doesn't even happen in the raw data anymore. Democrats, I thought, and it was a valid question last week, people asked me, and on book club yesterday for locals, people asked, and it was a very valid question. It tells me that I'm doing my job well when my most closest supporters ask me questions like this. Was there a Democrat response bias during the bombing of Iran? And last week, there was a tiny Democratic response bias. Tiny. but it was there, which is why I wanted to continue to be fair to the president, to be fair to the voters, to be fair to Democrats, to be fair to everybody around. And in truth, Wednesday no, I'm sorry. This is Monday. Thursday of last week, that bias had evaporated. And by the time we got to the weekend, we were right back to normal response rates for all. And in fact, normal response rates that are lower for some of Trump's core voters. Within the Republican sample, what you will find is a bit higher of a response rate for, like, I hate to use this term, but um, what the base would call like a rhino voter, a more metro Republican voter. That ticked up, while actually some of Trump's core support ticked down. But overall, the response rate for Republicans still looked good, still looked normal, still looked average, because they offset each other somewhat, but largely they did. Yet this still happened. All right. Now let me stop sharing this and bring up the identification after another 1,200 responses. I think we swapped verbatim how many new interviews we conducted. We swapped them verbatim. And let me just make sure I am looking at the most recent one. I am. And you will see almost no change. And I'm sorry, it does look like the sample size is a little bit less than last week in total, but not much. I think it's like 10 interviews less, but almost verbatim here, we swapped out in what would be like a rolling average. So for Sunday, Saturday, Friday, Thursday, 4-day rolling. Okay. This is what it was. Okay. This is over 3,000 interviews. That's a large interview. Generally speaking, do you consider yourself 38.1% Republican, which, by the way, is slightly higher than the one that we showed you last week, which was like 37.8. Do you remember? Slightly higher, but well within the sampling error, especially for the subgroup. So the fact that it's that consistent is astonishing. And tell me, I don't know, is Puffy going to be convicted? I am kind of interested at that. So let me know, guys. Democrats are now down to 33.3 on the dot. On the dot. Those who specifically say that they're an independent, 23.9. And those who say that they are something else, 4.7. Now get this. Even though ideologically, and there's always, how do I know the MAGA voter versus the rhino voter or the traditionalist voter? We ask them. We've been asking them for a long time. Are you a MAGA Republican or are you a traditional Republican? Which I really always hated that label, but there's nothing better. And this is why it's kind of remarkable. Normally we'll get about 48%. We'll say I'm MAGA core. 45, 48, right? I'm MAGA through and through to the core. The rest, and a smaller percent, actually around like 30%, will say I'm like a traditional Republican. Sometimes it's around 25, but that's where it is roughly. A quarter to 1/3. And then the rest will say that they are unsure, which I've always suspected is bull. They just don't want to tell us that they're MAGA. And some are seriously just unsure. Now, when we go down and we look at this, you can see this country is getting significantly less conservative. Significantly. All right. 24% liberal, a little bit higher than it was not only last week, but it hasn't even been a full quarter yet. But in the last public polling project that we released, I believe liberals were about 22%, something, right? 21, 22. That's a little bit higher. We have not seen it that high in a while. Moderates are now all the way up to 45.1, which, folks, is ridiculously high. Moderates used to be around 35 to maybe 40, of this country. Conservatives used to be upwards of 38%, sometimes 40. That is no longer the case. This country is getting less ideologically conservative. And that's because the new right is not traditionally conservative. They're not conservative in the traditional, you remember the litmus test that Republicans would put themselves through every time there was a nomination. And just, in order to make sure they passed that litmus test and then won the Iowa caucuses, only to go on and lose in New Hampshire and lose in South Carolina, then lose the nomination. They would lurch all the way to the right. Well, Trump came along, and he and only one other person in the history of our polling have ever polled ahead in both Iowa and New Hampshire for the Republican nomination, which I always thought was very informative about ideological origins in this country. Or not even origins, but the ideological the composition at that time of the Republican Party. And by the way, Donald Trump obviously is one of them. The other one was Scott Walker before he went off the rails and George Will's wife destroyed his campaign and his presidential aspirations. That's what happens when you hire somebody like George Will and his wife. They ruined his campaign with the stupidest canned comeback I've ever heard in my life. Also, Scott Walker is a really good guy, by the way. I just got to point that out. He actually is a really good dude. I'm disappointed that he and his lieutenant governor, who ended up trying to run for governor, would use these people, even though they were the real deal. Rebecca Clayfish would then go on to use the Jeff Rowe crowd and destroy her career as well. Odds-on favorite. All she had to do was be who she was. And she effed it up. Anywho, the larger point here is that Trump would come along and find a sweet spot. And he did recognize what Barnes and I told people for years, which is you still can win Iowa without pandering to the fake pastors and fake representatives of the evangelical movement in the state of Iowa. We all know who I'm talking about. You can still do that because there was a large and growing block of people that did call themselves evangelicals. However, they were culturally evangelical. Many did not go to church every Sunday. They didn't evangelize. They didn't judge people for being gay. They didn't judge people for this or that or the other thing. They were not the kind of Christian snobs, and we all know who I'm talking about, the kind of Christian snobs that took, tens of thousands of dollars from Ron DeSantis to buy his endorsement. The kind who pretend like they're better than the rest of the country and then get caught banging the maid, making the entire church look like hypocrites, judgmental hypocrites. Trump recognized that this was happening, and he found this sweet spot, slunk right through it. This is not just a trend in Iowa, it's a national trend. The electorate is getting less conservative. The American people are getting less conservative. Which is crazy, here's the kicker, while they get more MAGA, which to me is remarkable. Let me blow this up. For one reason, so you could see it better. For the second reason, so I could take a hit of my vaporizer without Laura yelling at me. I'm doing so good the whole time I'm in the gym. I'm using Zen instead. For the most part, I'm using Zen instead. But it is what it is. Shit's hard. What can I tell you? This month, 55.5%, which ticked down just a hair from last week, which makes sense because last week there was this intense, real time rally to the flag, rally to Trump. Right? Even though I'm talking about within the Republican Party. even though the country, in fact, was not rallying to him. Is it a vape or an anxiety pen? No, I mean, I don't do it for anxiety. I do other things for anxiety. There's been two things in my life that I've done for anxiety. The vape has not been one of them. I'm just flatly addicted to the vapor. I'm not even ashamed to say. Could be worse. And it has been worse, as you all almost assuredly know from my stories, which I've always been open to tell. Could be oxys. Could be worse. Right? I do have a Dean pen, which is very cool, and I absolutely love it. I have it from Shriveneers in London. I love it. It says Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, on it, right? Yeah, it says Rich Barris on it. Yeah, not my full name, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I keep it right here on my desk. You guys want to see it actually, real quick? I mean, I know you want to see the polling data, but I keep it still in the box. I got it from one of the Lincoln dinners that I was invited to keynote for. It's one of I cherish it greatly. I love it. I really do. And those were good people who were honest people. And maybe they're listening right now, so I'll shout them out, or at least I'll shout out who they are, not names. But like I have always mocked the Republican Party, but some obviously, listen and their number one goal is to represent people and to bring more into the fold. And I am proud to be invited to Union County in North Carolina to speak to them. This is an agricultural center. Once upon a time, um, has a history. Once upon a time, even though it wasn't the Republicans who did it, it was the Democrats. People were out there working in fields, and this area heard my message loud and clear. They reach out to minorities. First of all, there's a Southern black pastor who opens prayer for them. They know young people, minorities are the future, and they didn't waste their money, that hard-earned money that people donated to them on BS and nonsense, like every other scam grift county GOP that's on Fox News. No, they instead used it to do grassroots work, to register voters and go reach out to young people and non-whites to get them to vote. And they did a remarkable job bringing new voters, younger voters, black voters, Hispanic voters. I mean, they did an incredible job. And I don't care which party it is. I do favor both parties making efforts at all people, because that is what creates unity. We can't have a nation. And by the way, join book club. We were just talking about this yesterday. Join book club. We cannot have a nation when primordial interests override in an evolved state, override that sense of who we are, that sense of self. I'm an American. All these parties playing, racial politics, for instance, primordial loyalty, it's deeply destructive to the nation and the health of the nation. That's Clifford Gertz, by the way. You guys got to read. I mean, if you ever, you should just join book club. Join Locals first, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com, Sundays book club, and you'll learn about this stuff. So I don't really care what party it is. I favor everybody reaching out to all races in all geographic areas, and speaking to them as if they are an American, not as if they are a race or a creed or a reducing their identity to a geographic area. It's disgusting, and it's harmful to our country. It's the way of the mosaic, not the way of the melting pot. And a nation like this cannot be sustained if parties, like the Democratic Party does, let's be real, like the Democratic Party does, they exploit primordial loyalty, like race. They exploit that as a strategy to hold power. And it's deeply destructive to our society. All right. So there's that. All right. So again, traditional Republicans were 32.1%. America First Republicans were 55.5%, with only 12% saying they're unsure, while we usually have about 20% saying they are unsure. You might want to look at independents here because we, again, discussed this slightly on book club, not on the recorded session, but afterwards. You might want to take a gander at this, okay, which is that most people now who say they're independent or something else, when asked, would you say your views are more closely aligned to the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, equally close to the Republican Party and Democratic Party, or share little in common with either? You can see the share little in common with either is actually number one now, 28.2%. It's usually one of the parties. It is slightly more Democratic than it is Republican, 25.6. All right, to 23.7, with 22.5 saying they're equally aligned. So it made me think. Are independents really swinging away from Donald Trump? Because we do see that they swung away from Trump quite a bit. Are they really? Or are Trump's independent voters being temporarily cannibalized? And I say temporarily because I don't think they have any loyalty to the Republican Party. It's not that I don't think. They don't. It's right there. They have no loyalty to the Republican Party. They're doing this for Donald Trump. And the entire purpose for Republican existence right now should be to get these people in their camp. They're not going to do it with Tom Tillis dropping out because he's a coward who wants to serve as K Street Masters without any concern for voters holding him accountable. He basically just took the Adam crybaby way out. And now he's free to be a slave to special interest groups on K Street, which he will. He will be their bitch. He's free to be a slave to them and have no concern for whether or not the voters in North Carolina support or oppose what he's doing. And then they'll come out and say, I get to vote my conscience now. I really look forward to voting my... Shut up. You're so full of shit. You look forward to screwing over the American public. So we have that to back it up, but also we have the percentage of independents who say they voted for Donald Trump back in 2024. See, we know that Donald Trump won them. And yet they're about even in this sample. Why? Well, that's probably because those who voted for him and called themselves independents, to the pollsters, the exit pollsters, and everybody else that they had going, they no longer identify as an independent. They are calling themselves a Republican. We have seen this before. We saw it during the Obama era. Obama would go on to lose independents to Mitt Romney by about 5 points, yet he still won the election because, much to the surprise of Karl Rove and the rest of the Republican genius class who are stupid, there were a lot more Democrats than they thought. And I'm thinking that is where we're headed now. All right, let me take a quick break. And when we come back, we will look at some positive and negative news for Donald Trump and his approval rating. Okay, let's take a break, come back and tell you all about our friends at 1775 Coffee. What if your coffee didn't just wake you up, but actually made you feel sharp, focused, and ready for the day? That's the difference with 1775's Peaberry Coffee. These beans are rare. They're less than 5% of all coffee grown. They're denser, they're naturally higher in caffeine, and they're packed with antioxidants. That means more mental clarity, better energy, and zero crash. Each bean grows solo, high in the Bolivian mountains, and is handpicked at peak ripeness. The result? A smoother, more concentrated flavor that kickstarts your metabolism without the acidity or jitters. And by the way, on a side note here, before I finish this, a personal side note, you guys know, obviously, I've been dealing with some crap. We all get nonsense as we get older, okay? This coffee doesn't hurt my ulcer as much. I can't gonna limit myself with coffee that I have, but this coffee doesn't hurt my ulcer as much. That is probably because of what they're talking about. Less acidity. Anyway, getting back to it. You're still getting 1775's organic, small batch, small farm, single origin quality, just with a bean that goes above and beyond. Go to 1775coffee.com, use the promo code TPP. All of this is in the description, and get yourself 15% off. It's coffee that actually earns its place in your morning. All right. Again, the pea berry, they have all the starter kits. They're all up there for you guys as well if you want them. But the 1775 pea berry, if you have not tried it yet, I would suggest doing so directly. All right. Let's get back to it. And yes, I mean, I basically am a time traveler. Wise guy. All right. I don't know. You haven't heard? How do I do all this all the time? I'm either really good or I sold my soul to the devil. But somehow I keep seeing into the future, right? Mephistopheles or time traveler? Which one is it? We all can be time travelers. All of us. If we just, you all can figure out the events that are going to develop before you. You just have to listen. All right? It's a gift, obviously, that some others have innately. I really believe that. They're just very good at predicting human behavior, which is no different. I mean, that's what pollsters do, or what they're supposed to do. And political pundits, right? That's what they're supposed to do. However, when you're trying to get, how can I put this? When you're trying to get the world or make the world see things the way that you see things, when you are trying, and in the case of a pollster, what you're doing is using weighting techniques to change up the electorate so it better reflects you, the majority better reflects you. That's unfortunately what a lot of people have been doing. Instead of shutting up and listening, because they'll tell you. And then it's suddenly not that impressive. It was there all along. Look at Chris Wilson, the soon-to-be disgraced pollster, WPA Intel, Republican pollster. On and on, on and on. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Young voters are not voting for Trump like that. Black voters are not voting for Trump like that. Hispanic voters are not voting for Trump like that. And they're not going to be more than the black voter in the electorate. It's all a mirage. Yes, I'm friggin' Harry Houdini over here. I put a spell on everybody. It's so ludicrous. He wanted it to be the case that white people mattered more than everybody else. He's part of that wing of the Republican Party that is so stupid and partly racist that they believe you could just win more of the white vote to win the election. That's what made him make his polls say what they said. That was his own issues, his own bias. And just for everybody else out there who only cares about numbers, Republicans, because whites are getting more educated, Republicans, or have gotten more educated, it's a better way to state that. Republicans cannot win enough of the white vote for it to be sufficient for them to win overall. There aren't enough white people anymore, and there sure as hell aren't enough white people who agree with them and will ever vote for them. You're not getting back the psychopath white woman from the suburbs who's overly educated and had 3 abortions before she finished graduate school. Not going to happen. It doesn't matter whether you support the heartbeat bill or a ban on late-term abortion. You could pander to every fake liberal national holiday that they have created in the last half century. You could pander to that. You could put lipstick on if you're a guy and start running around talking about this is my truth, and they're still not going to vote for you. But the majority of Hispanic men who voted for Donald Trump They may. The 15% of black voters, by the way, I was exactly right. The 15% of black voters, they might. Trump, by the way, increased. He increased his support from 20 to 24 with every group except for a white subgroup. Take one guess who it was with. All right, let's get back to Trump's approval rating, which, as you saw if you were watching last week, you will know was negative last week. And it was negative driven by two things. One, a batch of independents who believed they didn't, focus on the domestic, deal with the economics. Unfortunately for Trump, the polling over the weekend still does suggest that all of the awesome economic news last week was completely drowned out still by the war drums in Iran. It still dominated the conversation, and that's tragic for Trump. The highest wage growth in 60 years. It's tragic for Trump. However, we haven't seen the percentage of independents say they strongly disapprove of Donald Trump meet or exceed 40% in a long time. It did last week, and it pulled his approval rating down to -2. Along with the group within that independent group, because a lot of people seem to think they think Trump voters, or they think MAGA, and they think Republicans. No. There is a very large and very important part of MAGA that is an independent vote. They don't like the Republican Party. They have no allegiance to the Republican Party. They left that spot blank when they went to go vote for their congressmen and women. Or they went to go vote for Donald Trump. They left the spot blank for their congressmen, men and women. They left their spot blank for their vote for U.S. Senator. Ask Mike Rogers, how's he doing? Ask Mike Garcia, how's he doing? Ask John Duarte, how's he doing? Ask Eric Hovda, how's he doing? Can I keep going? Ask Ms. Steele, how's she doing? Come on. Over and over and over and over. So frustrating. In any event, this is what it was as of last night. Okay? So for those who can't see, I will make it bigger, but it has now gone slightly positive. But if you're Trump, you'll take it. You know what I mean? It's better than slightly negative, right? I would rather be slightly positive. You know what, Full Metal Dragon? I just read your comment on YouTube, and that, like, literally, you're the only reason I keep doing this. People like you. Thank you for that comment. It means a lot. That's between us. You can go read it if you want. Do you approve or disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing? 28.7% strongly approve. Strongly disapprove is higher than it has been. It has only been about 30 to a third, but now it is 36.1%. However, that is down from last week, and we will see whether or not that continues. This last weekend are these numbers. When I say down from last week, I mean the weekend prior into the early week. This is from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Before that, wasn't looking good for Donald Trump. It was looking like independents exceeding 40% strongly disapprove, and that is not a good thing. They're hard to convince to come back your way once you have lost them in a presidency. Somewhat approve, 20.4. Somewhat disapprove, only 11.4. We're going to have to watch that vote coming up to the midterms, folks, if it stays, for two things. Will it stay this low, only 11.4, or will it rise? And if it does, or if it does not, regardless, who is winning the somewhat disapprove vote? Because back in 2022, the reason that Democrats were able to hold on, despite the fact that Joe Biden was deeply unpopular and his policies were deeply unpopular, well, there's two reasons. One is the Democrats had a ground game and Republicans were still sitting with their thumbs up their asses after 2020. But Perhaps this contributed to it. I have no doubt that it did. Nevertheless, Democrats were actually able to win the vote of those who said, and it was a large vote, they somewhat disapprove of Joe Biden. That runs in contrast to Donald Trump running against Kamala Harris. Donald Trump won the voters who said that they somewhat disapproved of the job Joe Biden was doing. Now, of course, he overwhelmingly won those who said they strongly disapprove. All right. But there you have it. So overall, 49.1% approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing as president, while 47.5% disapprove. Again, that is up from last week because last week he was -2, which is almost the exact opposite of what we are seeing now. Show is almost over, so I will show you this real quick. Also, a slight change is the generic ballot. And here it is. Last week, Democrats led by 2% on the generic ballot, 42-40. While this week, this week, it is completely flip-flopped. 42, and I mean, it's not exactly the same, but Republicans are at 42, Democrats are at 40.5, so it would round up to 41, but Republicans lead by 1.4%. All right, 49.9, to 40.5. That's interesting. 11.3% are still undecided. Only 6% say someone else third party. We all know what happens. It's a registered voter sample, to be fair. We all know what happens. The someone else will dwindle until we get to the election. It will fall to like 1-2%. And the other shares of the vote will go up along with undecided going down as well. That being said, this is a registered voter sample, and there is now the Pew Research study that is out, which I did want to go over. I just thought our polling was more important to go over with you. Pew Research does a post-election voter file validated study like the census does. They keep, gold standards. What the hell does that even mean? Can't poll a pre-election. I'm concerned about your ability to poll an after-election, but regardless, they have confirmed multiple things, big things that we said about who voted for who and what. All right. So again, the likely voter electorate, as the Pew Research study showed, is more Democratic than the registered voter population. So if you're looking at the overall population, who are you studying? Adults, registered voters, or likely voters, or all of them? Pew confirmed what we had been saying for years leading up to the 2024 presidential election. Like, no kidding, at least 2 years, more than that. I mean, because we discussed this during the midterms. It's one why Republicans underperformed. With the realignment comes the changing of the guard. Who gets more value out of low turnout elections? Who gets more value out of high turnout elections? Republicans are now the party of the low and no prop voter, meaning they are the party of the everyday man and woman. The adult population, is more Trumpy and more Republican than the registered voter population. The Democrats don't have a target-rich environment to go out and register new voters. Republicans do. However, it does give Democrats an advantage when turnout is low. It means their voters are more reliable. They're more likely. You can count on them to come out and vote. It's something that Republicans need to put front and center when, if and when they ever want to win another election. The adult population is more Trumpy and more Republican than the registered voter population. And the registered voter population is more Trumpy and more Republican than the likely voter population. So, in all honesty, it's possible that Republicans are not able to hold on to this lead in the likely voter sample. All right. I'm not saying that's the case. I mean, in truth, I could just do something right now and find out. Hang on one second. We could filter by vote history and we could look at this. Okay. Let's look at only those who voted in the 2024 presidential election. Oh, and by the way, Pew Research study was actually right on par. If everyone had voted, right? If everyone had voted, the entire registered voter population, Donald Trump would have curb stomped Kamala Harris. Curb stomped. Like, he beat her, and he beat her pretty good. But I mean, he would have kicked the daylights out of that woman. 5 points, national popular vote lead at least. Victory, not lead. A 5-point national popular vote lead, victory, at least. Could be upwards of 7. Wow. And what would that have done to the battleground states? Shift the battleground states on average 5 points to the right. Holy moly. That's a thorough ass kicking. Anywho, among those who voted in 2024, Republicans still do hold the lead. 44.2. And let me show you. I'll show you what I did. So if you look, see where I checked, just voted in 2020. This is vote history right here. We could go through all of them, actually. We can add them and not add them at will. We could check people who voted in 2024 but did not vote in 2022, period, or the 2022 midterms. Ooh, that's a good gauge right there. Since we're talking about midterms, let's say, yes, they voted in the 2024 midterm, right? But also that they did not, getting back. No, that's not it. Sorry. Can you bear with me? I know we're running out of time here, but I'm curious. I voted in the 2022 midterm. Let's say yes. And then now let's see. They see they're holding on to 1.5. All right, so that's a good sign for Republicans. That's a good sign for Republicans. That tells you that they got an advantage. It's a pretty consistent advantage. But again, this is early. And the likely voter model gets much, much more accurate the closer we get to the election, or theoretically it should, right? So that's a good sign for Republicans. However, 1.5 points is probably not enough to ensure that they keep their majority in the House of Representatives. They were able to win by roughly 3 points in 2022, and it didn't happen. So, is what it is. All right. All right. So, Levin is a neocon loser. What are you talking about? Mark Levin is a nutcase. By the way, Tel Aviv called. They want their unregistered foreign agent back. What the hell are you talking about, bro? Go listen to Mark Levin. Knock yourself out. Go listen to the war whore. Go have fun. This is a man. This is how, not for nothing, but I don't mean to attack people, but this is how stupid you are. All right. You listen to a man who simultaneously said that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, is senile, and that 20-something-year-old lunatic progressives are running the country, along with an out-of-control deep state. Out of one mouth, that's Mark Levin. On the other side of his mouth, but we should engage Russia on behalf of Ukraine. When the president's senile and a bunch of 20-something-year-old fanatic progressives are running the country with the deep state, we should engage in a war, a direct conflict for another corrupt nation who we shouldn't give two shits about, with another great power who's a nuclear great power? Bro, I can't help you. I cannot help you. Go listen, go find the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and then we'll talk. Okay? All right, it's 3:05. With that, we got a boogie woogie. I don't know what you're talking about. Shoot the pooch. The man's approval rating with independence is now 40% disapprove almost. Was it worth it? For something you don't even know you achieved? You think you do, but you don't. That's not how military conflicts work. I find it funny. It's like the first Middle Eastern conflict for so many of these people. It's their first conflict in the Middle East or something. You don't know that the intelligence community lies. You don't know that you can't tell how much or how little damage was done to a target. Give me a break. By the way, all the way through now, all the way through, a combined of 10 days in the field. And the question of which statement comes closer to your view on the U.S. role in the Middle East has not budged at all. There is still a slightly, 1 point, but slightly higher number of people in these surveys who are telling us that they want no role in the Middle East. There is no role for the U.S. in stabilizing the Middle East, including dictating who and who does not get nuclear weapons. There is more people who say that than there is that say the role of the U.S. is to stabilize the Middle East, even if it means military action and conflict to avoid the development of nuclear weapons. You're a dinosaur, dude. You're a dinosaur. All right. Here we go. Independents, by the way, by a massive margin, do not support the airstrikes on Iran and do not think that it is worth risking a war to even prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, you got to look past, and we had a segment, if you guys missed the interview on War Room last week, we had a segment on the first wave of these results with Steve and talking about how ridiculous some of the questioning was. Just absolute lunacy. Ridiculous. Do you want Iran to get a nuclear weapon? Do you support or oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon? And then after that, of course, is do you support or oppose bombing Iran's nuclear sites? Well, hello, Your Honor, leading the witness. It's not a real poll. That's a push. Objection. Leading the witness, Your Honor. Leading the witness. All right. With that in mind, it is Monday. I have another. Again, I think this week things will probably calm down. We do have projects going, and there's only so much time in a day. I got 2 people to meet with in the next 2 hours. So I would go over if I could. I would. But let's see tomorrow if anything has changed. I can almost guarantee you it's not. I can never 100% guarantee you anything because the American public seems to, typically has a mind of their own. However, after 10 days, also, we got to do something when it comes to pollsters not recognizing the trend that we started talking about in this show, which is that Democrats are falling off a cliff when it comes to party identification. This has not been like Gallup, where it's like up 1 here, down 2 here, up 1. It's not. The Gallup has actually done a very good job. But again, if you stretch Gallup's trend line out, what you actually will see is an overall trend away from Democrats. They're ups, they're downs every month, every quarter. But the long-term trend is very clear. Very clear. Democrats are losing more on identification, which shouldn't surprise anyone because what we have already seen in the established trend with registrations, and registrations is the lagging indicator. We will see the end of that trend before registrations see the end of that trend. Does that make sense to you guys? Hope it does. All right, don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. Subscribe. Sign up to Locals for all sorts of reasons, but of course, one of them is the book club. 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but thanks to 1775 Coffee, of course. The links are in the description to them as well. Go check it out, as are the links to the Public Polling Project. Share it far and wide. Fund it when you can. You know the deal. All right. All right. I will see you guys later. Hope you have a great rest of the day. Stay hydrated. Beat the heat, folks. Beat the heat. It's pretty nasty out there. At least it is by me. All right. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday, which you should always, I will leave you with this tidbit. Power of positive thinking is a real thing. Most people start off their week and like, oh, Monday, man, this sucks. I hate Mondays. Positive in, positive out. Positive in, positive out. That's the secret. All right? All right, guys. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you all later. And if Laura was here, I'm sure she would tell you. Deuces. She did want me to tell you that AOC is an idiot. That's what she did. She just reminded me. Jenny from the block, Laura? Jenny from the block? Yeah, right. Real girls from the Bronx, like my wife is, can't stand